Okay, then I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask you to just rise and face right for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome everyone who is here. We'll move down to public comments on agenda items.
Would we want to start by excusing the members who weren't able to be here that we know about, Laura?
Okay, we'll excuse John Campbell. He had a slight accident and won't be here tonight. And Aaliyah is excused. She is not well. And Desiree, I don't know what her situation is, but we'll go ahead and excuse her just because she's a student. How's that?
Sounds good.
Okay, so we'll move on to public comments on agenda items.
We do have one comment that was submitted, and so I will go ahead and read that aloud at this time. This public comment came from Carly Tigert. And she says, let me start by thanking you for the opportunity to share some thoughts. The current situation we are living with is incredibly stressful on our community and every individual in it. We all have unique circumstances that create different issues in regards to work, finances, family life, and education. I am watching my children struggle right now, as I'm sure many parents are. I am a full-time single parent that works full-time. I'm grateful that I was able to remain employed during all of this. However, that leaves me unavailable to be home with my children, high school and elementary age, to act as a teacher during the day. We have been met with multiple issues trying to access and complete schoolwork. Websites don't load, apps shut down, the computer runs slow or freezes. They can't access information. There is a severe lack of resources or reference material to complete work. There is also the issue of access for working parents who are not in a position to take time off of work to get to the school between teacher working hours. My children are not receiving an education. In all honesty, it feels like they are being put through the motions of a school district that is simply doing what they can to meet the state requirements rather than actually finding a working solution for our kids. My high schooler is failing, not for lack of effort, but for reasons outside his control. He is falling behind, and while we keep being told they have until the end of the trimester, at what point does a child fall so far behind that we realize this isn't working? Does the district and teachers understand the stress and anxiety they are creating when immediately giving a 35% reduction for late work or sending a progress report showing a failing grade? Do they realize our children are giving up because they just can't catch up, so why bother? Given the challenging nature of the online learning environment and the technological issues, do these policies make sense? I am a parent, not an educator. I refuse to allow my children to fall through the cracks of a system that is failing them. They are not receiving an education, and I question what will happen to them when they return to school. How will they go further in their classwork when they have not been able to learn the basic groundwork material? I ask you, how are you going to fix this? How are you going to make sure that our children do not get lost in the chaos? How are you going to use the resources you have to ensure an education to the students of this district without penalizing them for the failures of technology and access issues? How are you going to help our students to succeed? Thank you again, Carly Tigert. So we received Carly's message this morning, and I took an opportunity to check in with the schools. I've asked for some information from the schools. It is not an expectation in this district that teachers would be giving a deduction in grades during this time for late work. So we want to be able to work with her student that may be occurring for and help fix that problem. Our schools have been also working really hard to work with families when they're having connectivity issues, whether it's because of not being able to hook up in the first place or the strength of the connectivity in their home. And so if we can contact and communicate with the parents, or they can contact and communicate with us, A lot of those problems can be solved, or we can give them some advice on how to work with their internet providers to get those problems solved. I think in any case, our buildings, our leadership teams and our teachers are keeping a very close eye on the work that students are doing. And they are consistently looking at, are there students who need to come back in our early cohorts back in school? We started the first cohorts of student back in school that were struggling with access last week. We are looking at bringing more students into those cohorts. And her students may be some of the students that would be included in that, but we'll be working with the school on that. So I'm concerned like she is. We are working very hard as a district to meet the needs of our kids. We will keep trying to partner with our families to do a better job every day and make sure that our kids don't fall through the cracks.
Okay, thank you. And we, along with everyone else in this community, would really love for everything to go right back to normal and have our old lives back again. We don't know if it will ever be the same, but we're striving to create a new normal where most students will be able to get what they need when they need it. And as far as the parents are concerned, I totally understand the frustration and the, I guess, just the conflict within themselves about needing to go to work and their kids need to do their studies and everyone comes home at night and they try to work. I understand that and I appreciate Carly's comments and hopefully we will be able to resolve some of these problems for her soon. Okay, let's go to student board member comments. Liana.
Hi, can you see me?
We can see you.
Okay. I have a few things. First off, I think the biggest concern right now for students is just struggling to adapt to online school. A lot of students are just wondering when we're gonna come back. And I actually talked to someone that was wondering why fall sports were being cleared for training before we got to go back to in-person learning. I also wanted to address that a few weeks ago, many students were posting on their social medias a post about online school, just saying basically that it's overwhelming for them. Students are also curious about sports starting up and what they need to do to play and exactly what sports are starting back up. Seniors are concerned when it comes to graduation and what it might look like this year. And then also, I wanted to say, I've been told ASB has been trying to do things to engage the student body through virtual learning. And they did a freshman orientation slideshow presentation to substitute the in-person orientation. And that they also did a food drive to benefit the community. That's all I have.
Great, thank you, Liana. Do you want to respond to any of those concerns, Dana?
Sure, I'm sorry I was interrupted briefly. That was John's wife calling to give me an update on how he's doing. So that's good. Yeah, Liana, you know, the first thing I heard you talk about was there were people who were concerned about why would sports start when school hasn't? And I think we have to be, sports aren't starting yet. What is starting is the opportunity to do the same thing that we normally do in summer, the kind of summer workout time. And the body that sets, the governing body that sets the rules for sports for high schools in our state is different from the one and separate from OSPI that sets our guidelines and rules. And it's called the Washington Interscholastic Athletics Association, WIAA. And so separately from the rules we're getting about returning to classrooms, that OSPI is working with the Department of Health and the governor's office on. WIA is working with those same two groups on sports rules. And so the rules don't align. And that's the simple answer. But what we have been given permission at this point in time to allow is when coaches have turned in plans for returning to summer workouts, the equivalent of the summer workouts that meet all of the COVID guidelines and all of the masking and social distancing and all of the guidelines that have been set by the state in conjunction with WIAA, then those students could participate in the same kinds of workouts they would have participated in the summer, so not games and not practices yet. WIAA has changed their calendar so that the game season schedules for us now are going to start on December 28th. So the first teams that would be able to start real practices moving towards games would be the ones that are assigned to that new winter season that starts on December 28th. So there are 3 remaining seasons in the year, that one which is called season 2, and then a season 3 and a season 4. And they've rearranged which sports are when, and I don't have them memorized, but we do have that all on our website. So kids aren't getting to do the full sports experience right now, but they are getting to maybe participate in some workouts if all of the rules are being followed. And we would like our kids in school. We would like all of you in school. The guidelines that we are receiving are really strict, and we are working with our colleagues in other school districts in the area with both Kitsap and Mason County Public Health Departments, because we are part of both counties, although primarily we work with Mason because we're primarily in Mason County. On looking at the state guidelines, and the guidelines we have are from 3 agencies for whether school can be in session. They're from OSPI, the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. They're from the State Department of Health, and they're from the Department of Labor and Industries. And so we have to meet all of those rules in determining how and when we can bring people back to school. And those talk about how many the fact that when we come back to school, and I'm going to talk about all of this a little bit more in depth later in the board meeting, so I'll just give a quick summary. But we have to meet guidelines for social distancing and hygiene and wearing masks and protection and all of those things for kids and for students. And there are different variations for certain situations. So all of that is part of what we're working on, and we are working on a plan to start getting more kids back in school. And I'll be talking about that probably just a few minutes.
Okay, thank you. Does
Welcome.
that give you some information to share, Liana?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Liana, there's a couple PowerPoints I'm using in the meeting that we can also talk about sharing with other students and stuff. Okay.
That work for you, Liana?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thanks for bringing that up. That's important to hear.
Yeah.
Well, the board member comments. Art, do you have anything?
I have very little, nothing to report on myself of things that I've been doing or whatever. But I do have a comment I'd like to add to what the superintendent brought up and comment back to the letter from Mrs. Tygart. I would also like to add that in addition to what the superintendent has said, certainly on the board members level, on my level, but I believe also especially true for the district and the staff and what we haven't. It's would be fair to say we haven't exhausted the possibilities that are available to everybody in the world as to how to handle some of these issues that we've been thrown at. We are stuck with, of course, rules that come from on high and et cetera, but it's not like there's other solutions to explore that we still can maybe do or find out about and explore. For what I do in particular is I look at what other school districts are doing across the country. from the information that's sent to me and given to me and whatever. I haven't found anything that just really jumps out and says, this is a way to do something. Lots of people say that this is the way to do things, but then there's always, it's usually, it works because of their particular situation. Nevertheless, there's room for some, creativity that we haven't exhausted yet. And that's what I wanted to just bring up, is that piece. Maybe we'll figure something else out that will also then help kids like Mrs. Tygart's. That's it. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Leanna, do you have anything?
Well, thank you for being patient with me while I race to get on here. I have a little bit of just a couple comments about legislative stuff, but if you want to do that later on, I can do that then.
Actually, we don't have it on the agenda, so if you want to talk about it right now, that's fine.
Well, so we did the legislative, oh my goodness, Jesus take the wheel today, I swear. The
Priorities?
yeah, the priorities, but what do you call that? We all got together and
You
the
talked about positions, the positions that the legislature,
yeah, well, it was all of it together. This is the first one they've ever done, of course, on Zoom, but the first time that they've ever put both parts of it together. And it was like a big legislative conference for all of us.
Okay.
And the general session is what I was looking looking for. And it was very eye-opening. It was very intimate. I thought it would be a little colder since we weren't in person, but it wasn't. It was so one-on-one. If you wanted to talk, you could ask questions. They said I was really brave for asking questions so early on in me coming on. I don't feel I was brave. I kind of felt stupid a little bit, but it answered my questions. And Jim Stoffer is a really amazing guy, and he's been helping me out, as well as Rebecca Deal. And it's we put our priorities first, and I'll have a better list for you guys to put out to you. Was to put out a preliminary list, and they want, before we go off showing it to people, they want to fine tune it so that I think there's some things that maybe were brought up that were really important to some districts that maybe they didn't see before. So my choices fell in line. I'm learning about deadlines and where our times start and end, and I had a pretty good list, and some of it was I changed some of the amount of or priority where I had it on the priority list. I kind of looked what some of the small districts were doing, what they were choosing, where they were putting it, and I think really that I felt comfortable with is that I voted when I voted in the 98%. So everybody, when I voted, everybody, it was like 98% yes. And I'd be like, yes, I did it. Yeah, I was surprised. But it was really, really cool to go through. And I think that our list really, they say to pick things that you can try to change just this year. So it was really hard to choose from all of the, 40 some or 60 even. I have to look back through, I think it's 40. But it's hard to choose what a number one would be, right? I mean, you can't even, and it really puts some things in perspective where it makes you feel small to see these big things on the plate. But I think that by rearranging a little bit of what I had on the list to bring them kind of in tune with some of the other small districts, kind of gives our voice as legislative representatives, makes us a little louder. And I know that connectivity was one, and I know that transportation was on there, and especially with the small districts in our rural areas. and fully funding, actually funding and giving local control a go, you know, for and how they put things together in the taxes too. So there'll be a good list. And another thing would be, I have a thing, and I'm not sure how to ask it. And I'm going to probably talk to Dana first before I ask, but the who tells a good story? And I know that there's many, there's people that have so much information, but there's also young people, the students that tell amazing stories, and maybe it could be something that goes out, and there could be a lot of different ways to get those stories. So that'll be coming up pretty soon, and I'll talk to Dana about that. But
Okay,
that's my little
thank
spiel.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And if you'd like to have a section on the agenda where you report on those activities, we could add that so
Okay.
that you would have an opportunity to share what it is that you're learning over there and
Cool.
participating in. Thanks, Leanna.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go back to approval of the agenda. We needed a forum to be able to do that, so I'll entertain a motion to approve or amend the meeting agenda.
I
I
moved that
move we approve the agenda as as it's been presented to us.
Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote here. Leanna,
aye.
Art,
Aye.
and I vote aye, so the meeting agenda is approved. So we'll move down now to consent items. And I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented or as modified if you choose.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as written.
Okay? Any discussion?
Minor comment or two.
Okay,
I noticed in the policy review, I'm very happy how we have these policy reviews. Things normally go these days. It's been a good process, I think, for us. But I'm noticing I can't remember which one. I think it's probably infection control that there's a tightening up probably on the, well, from the state level on parents and students being able to opt out of vaccines. And I think that's a good thing. And there's also, as I read this properly, there was a staff inoculation option, which is now gone. Is that correct? Okay. I just want to say, I note that I'm not having any issues with that. Just noting that was there. Let's see if there's anything else I had a comment on. And the agreements and the contracts, I came in earlier today and I got several questions answered out. But I did have wanted to ask the Coffee Oasis contract, was there any cost to that? There was nothing listed there, and it says memorandum of understanding as opposed to contract. So that may be where that's at.
No, it is just an MOU that they're going to offer some support to some of our students especially in this time. There is no cost to the district.
Great. And then I just had a couple other questions which were answered, so we won't bring them up at this point. That was it.
okay, thanks, Art. If no other discussion, we'll do a roll call vote. Leanna,
Aye.
Art,
Aye.
and I vote aye, and the consent agenda is approved. So now we'll move on to item number 3, 2021 District Success Plan.
And I'm really pleased that Assistant Superintendent Lisa Roberts is here to present this, and we'll talk to the board about the plan overall. It's a little different this year because this year is a little different. So I will, with that, Lisa, we're all yours.
Well, thank you for letting me join tonight. I'm starting on the first page here because the one thing that has not changed in our district success plan in the last few years is our commitment to MTSS. And in saying that, I had the good fortune of being able to go to a national training in Kansas summer before last to the CI3T, which is kind of the basis for our blueprints in all of the buildings. And part of what they talked about is that when you talk about MTSS, and some people are afraid that it's just one more thing we're putting on our plate, the response was, it is the plate. It's what we do. And one of the things that we're trying.
Lisa, Let me just ask you to, MTSS is multi-tiered system of support. There may be people that have never heard of that before that aren't.
Thank you. And I will try not to use a whole bunch of acronyms. I could throw them all out and have a quiz, but you know, that would be fun. But okay, multi-tiered systems of support. And one of the things when you hear that term, if you see those 5 essential components, sometimes people only get stuck on that layered continuum of supports and thinks that's all that MTSS is. But it really is a framework, and it's a framework that depends on shared leadership, then data-based problem solving and decision-making, evidence-based practices, and that family, school, and community partnering. So part of what we're trying to, as we expand our MTSS work this year, we are trying to make sure that every stakeholder, the teachers, the administrators, parents, community, understand all of these components and what we're doing to work on that. If you look underneath it, it's some of the characteristics and activities that take place in this system are listed right there. But I do want to tell you that where we're really feeling like we're moving forward is the use of universal screening, particularly in K-8 in both reading and math, and then progress monitoring tools in both reading and math so that we can help our students move forward and be more successful in school. So I'll let you look at that for just a second. And as you're looking at it, that problem solving model that we're doing, it's being applied in a different way than we thought it would have to be. As you know, our problem that we're trying to solve right now is how do we make sure that all of our students are connected and engaged with school right now? And that's that's how we've started the beginning of our year. That's how we decided who our first cohorts that were coming back. But the challenges we have right now, I'm very pleased with how cooperatively everyone is working to try to meet the needs of our students in a difficult time. Can I have you go to the next slide? You've seen this before, but hopefully you can see that it has fewer bullet points and it has fewer measurable outcomes. We really are trying to focus more this year. And part of that is that we are really trying to focus on assessment literacy. How are we using data to make decisions about where kids are and where we need them to go? We are trying to make sure that we are creating as robust a distance learning opportunity for all of our kids that is possible at this point in time. And people are learning more and more every day about how to do that. We are in the ground steps of looking at some tier 1 interventions in terms of universal design for learning. So ways that we can offer choice and voice for students so that more students can be successful at a tier 1 level and we don't have to have as many interventions for students who are struggling. We are also moving, the things that are continuing our AVID work that we've been done, and that's, Dana, you'd have to help me on this, but it's the advancement via individual determination.
Got it.
Okay, got it. Okay, that we're using as a tier 1 support in our middle school and high school. It's really focusing on those skills that students need to be college and career ready. And we are continuing and let me see, I don't mean to be, and then right now, more than ever, it's that family engagement piece that is so critical. Not only are teachers reaching out to students every single day, but they're having to work with parents who are playing the role as a learning coach at home as well, and knowing how difficult that is for them. So it's one of our highest priorities that we have. So in the MTSS work that we're doing, it's a robust instruction, determining ways that we can intervene for those students who are struggling, but really keeping that tier 1, that 80% of our kids, what are we doing in first instruction in order for the majority of our kids to be more successful? And I will tell you this, we kind of did a grassroots on this one. All of the districts did their building success plans last June, and we did them in collaboration with each other. And then we looked at what are the goals, what are the priorities in all of our buildings, and what do we as a district need to do to support what the buildings have determined to be their supports. our buildings are 100% into the blueprint idea of what are the non-negotiables in each one of our buildings, and helping all of their staff to understand those non-negotiables when it comes to academics, behavior supports, and social emotional learning. So I feel like we have a strong start and a lot of work to do in a challenging time.
Thank you, Lisa. That was a really great explanation. Does the board members have any questions?
I don't, just good work. My goodness, lots of really hard, good work.
Yeah, our leadership team, including Lisa and our other leaders, have been doing so much behind the scenes work, not only to make sure we don't get lost and don't continue to move forward in the things we had committed ourselves to for kids, but to do that while we're battling with the COVID pandemic and how to best support our students and families. So I do want to call out and say thank you for all of that hard work and focus.
And can I,
Next.
Deanna, do you mind if I just say one thing? I do want to call out I know how frustrating it is for families right now. I cannot imagine being home with my own kids as well right now. Nobody wished a pandemic to occur for any of us, but our teachers and our families and our administrators have been working so hard to try to make systems, our learning management systems that we're using, to make things easier for parents so they're not bombarded by phone calls and remind messages. And then I know it's a learning curve for absolutely everybody, but I just want to thank the heroic efforts that everybody is making to try to make this as successful as possible.
Thanks, Lisa. Absolutely. And including our students, because just like this is completely new for our teachers, this is completely new for our students. And in some cases, they're a little bit more digital native than some of our adults, but that doesn't make it any easier. And I really appreciate everybody coming together in this unusual situation. I do want to point out that we typically have had this particular conversation about the district improvement plan earlier in the fall, and in October we usually hear from the principals, but we've been focused on getting the year off to a good start. So we do want to put that piece from the principals on our November agenda, and we'd like to suggest that, like last year when we had the principals come in for a study session prior to the agenda, so you could really ask a lot of questions about what they're doing in the buildings, we'd like to do that in November as well. So start with the study session on the building improvement plans and then move into the regular board meeting in November.
The other reason for that is that as we're looking at the school success plans, what they thought would happen and what were their measurables back in June are slightly different. There's very few behavior problems right now or discipline. So anything like that was a measurable just doesn't make sense in this particular environment. So attendance might be a more, and connectivity might be a better progress monitoring tool. So they're having to adjust their plans.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome. If you don't mind, I'm going to mute and turn my camera off, but I'll listen to you.
Okay, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay, we are at item 4, board development and linkage with the superintendent update.
Yes, and we will start with Ashley and the budget status updates.
Okay, so this is one of those meetings where we have to go over August again because we're an accrual-based school district. So as we're processing the financial statements that are due on the 26th of this month, we're moving revenues back to August when they're being received for work or items that were done during last fiscal year. And same with expenses. Expenses get moved back to the last fiscal year if they were for goods received during last fiscal year or services performed last fiscal year. So we have a lot of movement occurring in August right now. Right now, we'll start with where September went as far as finances for all of our other funds other than general fund. Capital projects, we're down to about $684,000. Over the course of the rest of this year, we should see this fund deplete itself, which is the purpose of capital projects funds. You don't run a capital projects fund with a balance continuously in it unless you have major capital projects that are being done. Debt service fund, we're currently sitting at just over 1.3 million, which is sufficient to make our upcoming debt payments in December. ASB, we're currently sitting at about 386,000. I do expect for the ASB fund to continue to decrease here over the next few months, seeing as how students don't have a really large opportunity right now to do fundraising, which is when we would normally expect for their fund balance to increase. The transportation vehicle fund is currently sitting at 180,000. Now, during the month of, well, early September, late August, we did take delivery of our brand new large bus that we got added to our fleet to replace the bus that was totaled last September. So it took about a year to get that bus, but it has its North Mason stickers on it and is currently on the road. We also received our depreciation payment in August, and so that's why we're still seeing that fund balance right up around $180,000. Now, we don't expect to see that fund decrease over the course of this year because we have no plans to purchase buses this year. We're trying to build this fund balance up and then purchase 3 to 4 buses at a time versus piecemealing them out at one at a time. So can you scroll the next page, Jackie? So this is where we're seeing our enrollment. This isn't exactly my favorite graph right now, but that's okay. So for 2021, obviously the pandemic has impacted nearly all school districts across Washington state. A lot of kids were pulled from public school districts and put into online academies, which has caused our enrollments to drop. So although we did budget conservatively, we did budget under what we were actually at last year for FTE. We're still under that as well. So in September, we had about 2,193 students. For October, that's when Running Start gets added. So that 2,193 increases to 2,222 students. So that's where we're currently sitting right now as far as our enrollment goes. For an example, at the right prior to the pandemic last year, we were at 2,334. So that's where we're seeing that drop. So right now, for the first 2 months of the year, we've averaged 2,207 students.
So that's about 100 less, a little more than 100 less.
A
than
little,
expected.
correct. We're right now, the numbers, depending upon if you're looking at head count or FTE, we're between 103 and 112 under what was budgeted. And we budgeted at 3,329.
2,329.
Yeah, sorry, 2,329. Wow. We anticipated 1,000 student growth.
So what does
So
that translate into in terms of budget? How much money?
about 1.2 to 1.5 million dollars.
Okay. Okay.
So, but we've already met as a team. We've discussed ways to continue to cut costs. We're being super conservative with our purchasing. We're applying for new grants. And we have had some successes on that side. Leanna actually passed a private grant opportunity over to me. I took a little stab in the dark and put together a grant application for it, and we were successful in receiving that. The grant ranged anywhere from a couple $100 up to $20,000. I put together a package for a $20,000 grant, and we received the $20,000 grant. So
Nice.
that grant can be used on helping community members that were impacted by the pandemic with homelessness or not being able to pay their utilities, all that kind of stuff. So we haven't gotten the money yet. We should be getting it in the next few weeks, and then we're putting together a plan on how to best utilize that. We also received a few other categorical grants as well. So we're trying to help supplement that deficit with new grant money, And then just ensuring that we're watching our costs over the course of the year so that we stay under budget by enough to absorb the lost revenue from the FTE.
Okay,
Can Jackie, can you pull the August dashboard next? Perfect. Look at that. Okay, so this is another snapshot of August. Now, this isn't the final August one because we're still in the process of making changes. It's a fairly lengthy process. So total revenues actual year to date, we're a couple percent over, which is good. Obviously, with that just means we were able to bring more dollars in the door than we were actually anticipating. Our local sources, so this is anything from donation to local tax revenue. We are about 10% over what was originally budgeted. A lot of this is due to donations that were received by the school district during the course of the spring that were used to help purchase things like PPE and such due to the pandemic. State resources were about 3% over budgeted, and federal resources were currently at about 81% or about 20% under what was actually budgeted. Part of the reason is that we haven't claimed our full ESSERS amount yet, but by the time financial statements are done, we will have, and then those revenues get moved back into August. So you're going to see that percentage grow over the next month. You want to go on to the expense side, Jackie? So next slide. Okay, so that first semicircle, that green one, that's the one that we really like to watch because that shows if we're meeting our minimum fund balance requirements based upon board policy. Board policy is that we keep 8 to 10% of a fund balance, and we're currently sitting at about 8.83. I expect that to get a little bit closer to 10% due to those ESSER funds that we're requesting reimbursement on for the CARES Act. And so we should be ending the year right around 3.2 million, which is about 10%. Our total expenditures actual year to date, we were right on budget. So you can see that we're only 0.03% over. So that's good. We really managed to stick exactly to what was budgeted for this year, even during the pandemic, which is awesome. Salaries and benefits, we were under. Again, that was due to last minute cuts before the start of last school year. And all of that flows into the basic education actual year to date. Okay, next slide. So that dark blue line is where we've trended the entire year for month-end fund balances. And the far right is where we're ending as of right now. You can see it showing about 2.822 million. That green triangle is where we had budgeted to end. So you can see that we are over, or I'm sorry, the 2.822 is where we budgeted to end. That number that's coming up in green right there. That dark blue line above it, we're currently at just under 3.1 million, which you'll be able to see on the next page. So we are over where we had budgeted to end, which we had made some last minute changes at the end of last year, knowing the pandemic was going to be here, knowing we needed more money in reserve to start this year, which is why you're seeing us above that triangle. So for this one, if you're looking at the table on the right-hand side where it says current year-to-date annual budget and we really try to point out on this one is your current year-to-date total revenue, which you're seeing as 36,292,000 and some change, versus what your expenditures were, which was the just under 35 million. Since we were trying to rebuild fund balance, we expected to see a positive number there. And we currently, from last year to this year, based upon what was budgeted, we added 1.3 million to fund balance. Some of this is due to the reorganization of apportionment when they started backloading apportionment for school districts in the months of July and August versus giving us the money during the course of the school year. Because they do it backwards like that now, we are always going to expect to start the year with a higher fund balance. And come June, you expect your fund balance to be at its lowest point before it's refilled again come July and August. Next. Is that the last slide for this one, Jackie? Yeah. Do you guys have any questions about where we're sitting for August currently?
No, but I'm really glad we have that fund balance since we are losing students, since our enrollment is down.
That right there is literally our lifesaver. I'm very, very proud of the work that the district did last year, mid last year, when things financially weren't looking super great on the levy side. And we had to make those tough decisions early on what we were going to cut. Obviously, having no idea that a pandemic was right around the corner. We put ourselves in a position to be able to weather the storm. So not only are we one of the only districts in Washington state that is currently operating 2021 without a levy, but we can manage what we have this year with what we have, what we're receiving, to include absorbing the revenue loss from decreased enrollment. We're putting the work in, making sure that we're watching each dollar, and it's showing. So that's great.
Definitely. Thank you for all of your work on this. I can't imagine how difficult it is to try and juggle all of those marbles and still end up with that kind of a fund balance. That is to be commended. Thank you.
I thank you. Okay, we can move on to September. Okay, so September, we're currently, our total revenues were a bit over where we would have anticipated to be. Part of this is due to, and this is an accounting side, it's accrual reversals haven't occurred yet. So I haven't reversed the revenues that I pushed back into August. I haven't reversed them out of our September revenue counts, which is why you're seeing that. We're actually technically right around where it was projected as of right now. One of the things that I was really excited to see this year, or during the month of September, and was completely unexpected, is when I got our apportionment report at the end of September. And our treasurer's statement, it showed a state forest payment of almost $71,000. That is more than we received all of last year. So we only get word of that once it's on our treasurer's statement. So I don't know how much to expect from month to month. And it's something that you sort of, you budget based upon a conservative estimate of what you had received in prior years. So the fact that we've already received 70,000 is huge. That will obviously decrease. That's for logging that had occurred over the summer. Over the winter, you don't expect a lot of logging to happen. So I don't expect a whole lot to come in over the winter, but I'm hoping that the end of October shows another payment. In addition to receiving that 71,000 in the general fund, we received about 60,000 into the debt service fund. So this is the money that I was able to pull and transfer, that $1 million, in order to pay for the softball field or the early kindergarten portable and the roof. So getting that money into the debt service fund allows us capacity to be able to transfer it into capital projects fund and be able to maintain or build on our current building. So that was a great thing to see happen at the end of September. Next slide. Okay, so this is our expenditures. So obviously it's September, first month of our fiscal year. That green semicircle is where we would be tracking at year end for fund balance purposes. Again, this is hyperinflated right now because of accruals and such. So you'll end up seeing September again with more accurate numbers once all the accruals have actually occurred. So we're not trending to be sitting at a 15% fund balance. But as of right now, based upon where the financial statement process is, that's where it's currently showing. Everything else we're sort of tracking right under what was projected for expenses. And that's where we're expecting to be, because we do have that loss of revenue due to student FTE. We can't necessarily spend all the money we had budgeted because we had budgeted to receive that $1.2 to $1.5 million more. So we are looking at cost cutting to ensure that we basically can absorb those deficits. Next one. Okay, so this is our current trend. So the dotted lines are our 3 prior years, and our start of our blue line is right there. You can see I didn't trend it all the way over to that green triangle. It's apparently late already. But it's because when I did that, it was off the charts because of that 14%. So it looks wonky. But as of right now, you can see that we are higher than we have been in the last 3 prior years as far as our fund balance goes. Again, this is intentional. We need to have the money to be able to pay costs come May and June, when our apportionment drops to only 5%. And we won't have the April levy collection to be able to pull from. So we'll need to be able to pull from the fund balance to ensure all the bills get paid. Next slide. Okay, so this is a little bit more detail about where we're trending and where we're spending currently. One of the funny things that I noted when I first looked at this is that negative $674. So in the when we book for training, we like to book early because you get early bird discounts. Well, then when everything got canceled, we had a massive amount of refunds for training. And so now we're currently sitting in a few areas with some negatives. So over time, once things get booked again, you'll see those negatives go away. But as of right now, we are sitting with a negative travel balance. Everything else is trending right where we would expect it. With the increase in federal revenues that we had not anticipated when we had originally budgeted, we are going to see our federal revenues be higher this coming year than it has been in prior years. Something else that will also throw off these trends is the fact that our summer food program from the federal government was extended past December now through the end of the school year. Our summer food program brings in money from the federal government, but we didn't expect for the summer food program to be extended throughout the rest of the year. So we will see that year-to-date % of budget continue to increase throughout the rest of the year. Okay, is this the last slide that I had on this one, Jackie? It is. Okay, so that's all I have for September. Again, September's numbers will change again. So in November, when we do our final presentation regarding our financial statements and where we're ending August for last fiscal year, we'll also take another look at the month of September, so you can see actual numbers and not this 14% fund balance number, since that looks so wonky. Do you guys have any questions though about where we're currently sitting or going to be?
I don't have any questions. I just, I kind of like the 14% fund balance, but that's, we need that because we're not going to have any
Yeah.
left next year to help us through 2021 and
Yeah.
then 21, 22.
Yeah,
So-
we're going to need to make sure that we stay right at about 10%, because come May, I'll need to uninvest 1.6 million just to get payroll and vendors paid, electricity, all of our utilities and such. So if we don't have the excess 1.6 sitting there, we wouldn't be able to pay the bills come May and June. It throws off our trends a bit for now, but over the course of the next few years, we'll see that even out.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Ashley? Okay, thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome.
Okay, we are at teaching and learning update.
Yeah, so I have a short little PowerPoint included in the agenda, and I'm going to go through that first. And then, do we have the other one also, Jackie? Yeah, we'll do the short one first, and then I have a longer one that is talking more about our transition and our plan to bringing kids back. So we'll go through that. So this one is just very briefly where we are, where we've been. So currently, and as you know, we've talked about before, is we plan and look at where kids can learn, and the reason we're learning all remotely right now and are trying to figure out when we can safely come back in hybrid. Part of the guidance we have from Department of Health includes a planning document, and this little white box on the PowerPoint is drawn from there because it talks about when we're in the activity level that would be most appropriate to start bringing whole grade levels back to school. And when I put this together 2 weeks ago, we were still in the moderate level, which is between 25 to 75 cases per 100,000 for our county of Mason County. As of Tuesday, got 2 pieces of data. The more accurate piece was that actually right now in Mason County, we are over 100 cases per 100,000, which puts us well into the high risk range for returning kids to school. Now, I received that information from the Mason County Department of Health because I had a slightly lower number that came from the state report. But the reason that we're so high in Mason County right now is really tied to the outbreak at the nursing home in Shelton. And the majority of cases in Mason County are tied to that, either employees or people, residents. If you take that piece out of the mix, our number of new cases per day in Mason County are closer to 3 or 4. And so that means the word I have from the Department of Health is that they anticipate, and you know, nothing is written in stone. And as we all know with this pandemic, everything changes at the drop of the hat. So, but when I talked to them on Tuesday, there was an anticipated belief that within the next week to 2 weeks, we would be back in the moderate range in our county, within somewhere between 25 and 75 cases per 100,000 averaged over the previous 2-week period. And that's really what we have to look at as where we want to be able to have more kids back in school. As you know, we started to bring back kids that we had identified as least engaged in learning last week. And once we started that, we did receive notice from Mason County that it's okay to keep serving the kids that you have brought into school already, but kind of put a pause on bringing any more in until we get those numbers down. So we are working hard on getting those numbers, watching to see when those numbers come down, because of course we can't do anything about it. But what we are doing in the meantime is planning for how we can bring kids in, how we can make a hybrid model work so that instruction is effective on the time that kids are at school and the times that they are at home, and that our communication continues to grow with families and students, that we continue to get better, but we also ensure that everybody is in a safe place when they're learning and in a safe place when they're in our buildings. So when we bring people back, we reviewed our district guidelines for reopening. We've tightened some things up. We've created a new document that's and kind of next where we're going that I'll show you in just a minute. We've started a survey with our families. So when we started the year, we asked families to identify whether they wanted to be in HomeLink or they wanted to be in North Mason Online, our new online school. And in both of those cases, they were committing to staying in a remote learning model all year. Or if they wanted to identify that they wanted their students in hybrid, so that when we get to come back in the building, they would be among those students coming back into the building. But we also know that everybody has different feelings and levels of comfort with how they interact with people in this pandemic environment. So we may have families that change their mind about where they want to be once the opportunity to come back to school is there. So we're doing a survey of those families who are in hybrid, saying, okay, and particularly of our youngest students, we're getting ready to start bringing some kids back in. Are you planning to have them come to school? Are you planning to keep them home? If you plan to have them come to school, are they riding the bus? So that will help us do some planning. We may have to adjust staffing as we see how many are choosing to stay home or not. We're looking at that, and we're getting our protocols and expectations tightened up and sharing them. And one thing that we'll be using a lot is this acronym FIRST that we borrowed from a neighboring district. We think they did some really good work putting that together. It's F is for face masks, I is for if you're ill, stay home. R is for remove germs. So, washing hands and doing all of the hygiene, following all of the hygiene. S is for 6 feet apart, and T is for temperature checks. So we'll use that acronym FIRST to keep working with kids about all the things that they have to do to be at school, to be healthy and safe, and that we have to do as adults too. So as we look at coming back to school, and we're bringing back our youngest learners first, because the data is really clear that, and Liana, I know the high school kids want and need to be in school, but the data is really clear that the kids who are being most damaged by the opportunity not to be in front of teachers right now, and who could have the most long-term effects, really are those youngest kids. And we need to get that, if we can get people face to face, and we can't get everybody all at once, that they need to be the first kids that were coming in. So we're looking at, when we start hybrid first, we're probably going to start with K1 or K2 in a hybrid model. And then when we're successful with that group, we would be moving on to the next group till we move through the middle school or elementary school into the middle school, and then into getting high school back. So it's a long range process. And part of the reason is there's some very specific rules around when you're in school, how the Department of Health wants us to have kids staying in one space, not moving around a lot, being in a cohort, and not having exposure to lots of different other combinations of kids or students, which doesn't make any real sense with the idea of being in high school, going to your different classes. So we're having to figure out, is that rule going to change, or how are we going to bend what we do to fit within that rule? And districts together, we're all talking about how to best do that for our high school kids, and we haven't solved it yet, but we're still working on it. But in the meantime, we are looking at bringing in the primary grades kids first. And we've been working with districts all over the state, looking at things that are happening all over the country within our state. There's been kind of two different ways that folks are doing to bring the primary grades in an AABB model, which is what we have been talking about since July, which is one group on Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday is a break, deep cleaning day when kids are still learning at home. And then the other group comes in on Thursday, Friday. We also looked at, a lot of our neighbors were looking at that, and some of them have switched to two groups in one day, a morning group and an afternoon group, 4 days a week model, still with Wednesday as that cleaning day and stuff, deep cleaning day in between. But we looked at that for our students and compared the benefit to students and the cost to the district. And what we found were neither one of those things gave us a good reason to do it. So in our district, for example, well, to make a comparison, our district and South Kitsap cover roughly the same number of square miles. We have 2 elementary schools that serve those square miles. South Kitsap has 10. So buses are taking kids on much shorter rides to go to those 10 schools than they are to come to our 2 schools. And so when we look at, if we did a morning group and an afternoon group in North Mason, those kids would probably only get to be in the classroom 1.5 to a maximum of 2 hours with their teachers for those 4 days a week, which is very limited. But with the AABB schedule, with kids following a traditional, what our normal day would be, a 6.5-hour day of kid time in the building, now we're looking at, they have a whole 13 hours versus 6 to 8 hours in front of their teacher, in addition to the asynchronous time away from school. And so it makes more sense because of our geography to stay with a 2 days a week, 3 days at home schedule for kids. We also compared the cost of transportation for the district because, as you know, we have to do everything through the lens of how much it costs us right now. And We do get reimbursed from the state for some transportation costs, but when we were looking at just for elementary school to come back, we were looking at receiving from the state, say, starting with kindergarten and first grade, receiving from the state for transportation for the students we have for that, whether they were on all at one time or in those two different morning and afternoon routes, about $213,000. The cost to us of running the routes, no matter how many kids are on the bus, and the more kids are on the bus, then the better it is because we receive more money back. But the cost for running those routes was $1.2 million. So we were going in the hole an additional $1 million. Whereas if we, the cost, if we are running just one route a day for those kids is still more, at least until we start bringing more kids. It's still going to be more than what we get reimbursed. But as we start bringing more grades in, then the difference between what we're getting reimbursed and what we are putting out is coming together and has a better chance to balance out with the AABB model. So that's why that's the model we will be continuing to recommend as we go forward. And I think I just talked about all of that. So our plan is to return our primary grades when it makes sense, based on the number of cases per 1,000 and the transmission rate. So we look at both things. We look at our number of cases per 100,000. We look at the number of cases per 100,000 over the past 2 weeks, and also a transmission rate, which is something they come up with the testing and how many people are tested and what percentage of people test positive, that is lower than 5%. So we look at those two things being together as time when it's a relatively the right time to make a decision to come back. So we're targeting sometime in early to mid-November. I have a real number in my head, but the minute I say that, I'll have families planning for that, and I don't want to disappoint anybody if it's a little bit different. So as soon as we know for sure a date that we can count on bringing those early kids in, we will tell our community. But right now, we're still watching the numbers, working with all the folks we have to work with to continue to plan and get ready to go. I think, is that the last one on this one?
It is the last one.
Okay. So before I go on to the other document, does anybody have any questions so far?
No, I just wish that they could consider North Mason differently. That they could extrapolate our numbers and see what they are. But I realize that the COVID disease or bug or whatever it is isn't going to stop at our district border.
Yeah,
We have to be, it's what it is.
it is what it is. So Jackie, can you pull up that new PowerPoint that you and I have been working on today? Thank you. So this one is very wordy, and it's really more of a document, and we will, it's in draft form, but we will be posting this document so everybody in our community can read through it and ask questions. And the first page is really just a letter from me saying, folks, we are working really hard. Our staff is doing enormous effort to put together a plan to get kids back in school as soon as we can safely do so. We agree with everybody. It's the best place for our kids to do their learning, and we want them to do it there. We are doing, though, I do want to note that our teachers and our kids and our families are learning how to do remote learning, and they are getting better at it. And we are seeing great things happening. So we know that that's going to continue to be a part of what we're doing for a long time while we continue to battle this pandemic. And we're going to keep working on getting better and working with our families on it. But we're also working on getting some kids in school some of the time, at least, to start with. And we have to look at all the things I listed on the left-hand side of the page. You know, what does the instructional program look like? How do we plan for health and safety? How do we make sure we have the facilities and the right preparedness? Do we have protocols for every situation that might come up? Have we looked at the expenses? Are we ready to respond when we have COVID cases? How are we dealing with wellness, and how are we dealing with transportation? Oops, those got on the same line accidentally. How are we looking at student activities and athletics and staffing and technology and food and nutrition? So we have to keep juggling all these things. And that's part of why last week, we moved our lunch deliveries from Tuesday, Thursday to Wednesdays only, in anticipation of, yes, last week we brought a small group cohort of students back, but as we bring more and more students back on a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday schedule, we're going to be using that Wednesday for the meal delivery for the people who are at home 5 days a week. And then the kids who are in on the cohorts or who are in the building on Tuesday will take home 3 days meals with them at the end of the day Tuesday for the days they're not in the building. The kids who are in on Thursday, Friday will take home 3 days of meals for the days they're not in the building. So we're going to end up having 3 different kinds of delivery dates as we move through that. Okay, next. And again, the first, this is very important. We're going to keep hammering this at people. Face masks, stay at home if you have any symptoms. Make sure you're doing hand washing and following hygiene. You're staying 6 feet apart, and we're doing temperature checks everybody that comes in the building, in addition to the other attestation pieces. Next. So we're going to do it with phases. And again, this is a lot of information on this slide, but basically in the elementary school, we're going to start with kindergarten through first, probably kindergarten through second, maybe. And we'll have kids in 2 groups, a Monday, Tuesday group, a Thursday, Friday group, with a Wednesday, a day that everybody's learning at home. Support programs will still happen. Some will happen while you're in the building. Some will continue to happen online, synchronously or asynchronously, working with your teaching staff. Students' IEPs will be met in both situations and in multiple ways, their IEP goals and requirements. And specially designed instruction will continue to be delivered in conjunction with the general ed classroom teacher. And so all of those things are part of the planning as we go through, and cleaning is happening throughout the school day. So just as an example, as we have people in our buildings, whether it's the few adults that are in now or the more that are in, and as kids join us, the requirements have really changed to keep things safe and hygienic during COVID. So our bathrooms are cleaned now at least 4 times a day, and we post in the bathrooms. You just like when you go to a rest stop, you can see when was the last time that this bathroom was cleaned. And then it will be, as we move into middle and high school, it will also be very similar. We'll be looking at a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday cohorting of students and how we get them back in school. So next. Everyone will be required to do a daily health attestation. Right now, you can do it in one of 2 ways. You can do it in Skyward. You can log into Skyward, and there's a document right there on family access that you read it. And if the answer to all the questions is no, you click save, and you now have told us that you have your child has no symptoms and they're safe to come to school. We also have a paper document, and we are planning to probably send paper copies home. So families have those as an option, and they can bring it and turn it in each day. The student can bring it. Kids will have their temperatures taken as they get off the buses. And we decided to do it as they get off the buses instead of as they get on the buses for a couple of reasons. Doing it at the bus stop and as every child gets off would take a lot more time, would take a lot more time than it would as they get on the bus. Plus, if parents have already left for work and their students are at the bus stop, but we don't want to send a little one home from the bus stop that has a temperature without knowing there's somebody to take care of them. So we're looking at how to best deal with that. But right now we're thinking they will have their temperature as they get off the bus. And then if there's a problem, they won't go to class, they'll be isolated, and we'll contact families. But everybody will have to wear masks on transportation. Students will wear masks. We will keep them as far apart as possible, and we will keep them sitting in family groups. When the kids arrive at school, they'll have a temperature check. They'll make sure that the health screening attestation has been done for the day. They have designated entrances that they will be at. Hand washing will happen repeatedly throughout the day. Kids will eat in their classrooms. It'll be grab and go lunches. So again, we have tons of precautions, and a lot of this is about all the precautions that we have. Everybody is required to wear a mask. There are a few exceptions for some students with very specific conditions or requirements, or and those will be handled on a case-by-case basis. But we have a 4-page document now that details for staff what kind of masks, and maybe in addition, shields and gloves and gowns they need to wear in what situations. So we're going to make sure that everybody has the appropriate personal protective equipment to keep them, to protect others from anything they're breathing and to keep them safe. There will be hand sanitizer in all over the place. People will be washing their hands regularly throughout the day. All of that hygiene will be going on. Okay, so next. In the classrooms, we will be doing physical and social distancing. Things aren't going to look like they have always looked. We won't be able to sit in groups facing each other at little square tables and work in cooperative groups in that way. Things will be different. Seating will be assigned. It will be very specific, and everybody will be socially distanced. In the past, in elementary schools, kids have shared crayons and different materials. That's not going to be the case. Everybody will have their own little bag of assigned materials that are only theirs to use, and there will be no sharing. We will emphasize personal hygiene. We'll be teaching and practicing hand washing and other hygiene practices. Signs will be everywhere in English and Spanish. Cleaning and sanitation will happen throughout the day, with extra at night and on Wednesdays, and in between the groups of times that kids are in the room. Food will be grab and go. Meals will be, you get them, and in elementary, they'll probably be, we're still deciding, they might be brought to the classroom, but there won't be any eating in a commons or any place where you're sitting closer than 6 feet. We will have to maintain social distancing in everything that we do. So specialists that might use the gym or the library or music rooms, there are specific rules to each of those situations. We will be following each of those sets of rules, and those are detailed a little bit more in the plan. And transportation I've kind of covered already. So we know ridership will be down a little bit. Probably more parents will want to drop their kids off, but we will follow all of the recommendations and do our best to keep everybody safe and healthy. And we've already heard a lot about the attendance modifications that we're doing. Attendance is now measured on how you engage in school. So we look at all of the health and safety things. We make sure you're doing your work and you're engaging and you're in contact with your teachers, and all of those mean you're here. And so we will continue to work on that. Our focus is on keeping ourselves and each other safe so that we can be in the building learning together. And we will post this, and we'll get this out to the board, and we're going to be sharing it in more detail, because it is a very long plan, but I just wanted you to see the work that we've been doing. Can you back up, Jackie, and show the slide with the white document, the how we make decisions? So this is a flow chart that we will be using. If you come to school and you have a symptom, if you are thinking about coming to school and you have a symptom, this is how we are going to ask our staff to make decisions. This is how we're going to ask our families to make decisions about, should I stay home or not? And basically, if you have a couple of symptoms, you need to stay home until you figure out for sure whether those are something else or whether they are COVID. And this kind of goes into all of the details for that. All right. So most of the rest of the document is a long question and answer about what if in the COVID cases. And we'll make this document available. We are also, this document does not include a lot of details about what the school day looks like when the kids come back yet. Those are conversations we're still engaging in with teachers and principals to make sure that we have the best possible plan for kids in place. And we will share that well before the first group of kids comes back. So that's where we are.
Wow, who would have ever thought, huh?
I know.
It's an amazing amount of work. Thank you for sharing that. And are you going to put this on the website too?
We will, yes.
And thank you for explaining all of that. And I'm hoping that somebody that has any questions is watching, because that really answers a lot of questions. And I know they could probably go back through this and look at it. That's a lot of information all wrapped up into that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point, Leanna. We can all direct people to this on the website when they have questions, and we can't really answer them as clearly as that document can.
Yeah.
Anything on capital projects?
No, I kind of looking at Ashley a little bit. We are hoping we're going to get wrapped up here on the softball field. We did not say yes, we were ready to say it was done, and we asked the contractor to come back in and do a couple of things. And we have followed up. When COVID hit, we were almost done with the scoreboard and everything, so we could say all the electricity was done at the stadium, and then electricians couldn't come because they couldn't come to work. So we believe that that will be getting wound up here pretty quickly too. Is that right, Ashley?
Yeah, we had one of the companies we were working with that was help managing the program has reached out to the electrician to try to get them out here. Unfortunately, they've done part of the work, but not all of the work. So it's really trying to get them here. But of course, with everything going on at this point, but we do have the vendor trying to work on getting the electricians back in to finish out the press box. That's the last piece of the stadium before we just have a fully functional stadium. And then softball field, like Dana said, we did have the company come back out. They wanted us to sign off on it being done. There were some things that we just weren't quite comfortable with, and we wanted them to sort of rework. And we weren't, there was some additional costs that we hadn't necessarily approved beforehand. So therefore I denied paying, and they are having to reduce the final billing to take those costs off. And then our softball project will be completed. The roof at Sand Hill, they had some punch list items to do. They've completed those, so we're getting ready for final sign off on the Sand Hill roof. And the portable is nearly done. We don't necessarily have the occupancy permit quite yet. We're waiting on a few last sign-offs for a sewer. And then we should be good to go there. Oh, we do have one thing left for the softball field is the ADA ramp to ensure that the softball field is ADA accessible. That should be coming in here shortly, and then will be installed, and that will be the last piece of that project. But I think that's it. That's sort of, we're literally concluding almost everything right now, which is why you see that fund balance starting to decrease. Once we've been able to finalize those projects, there are some capital projects that are needing to be done. One of them to do with a fire hydrant that you currently see tagged off in front of Sand Hill. That has been determined that it's on our side of the property, therefore it's our responsibility to fix. And a few other things. So we're hoping to see some money left there, and we can reroute it to those projects, but we'll see once we get all of these ones done.
Okay, thank you. All right, our upcoming letter columnists will be me for October and Art for November, and probably John then for December as we roll around here. And now we are at item 5, the assurance of organizational performance and policy review. And this is for ER 13 mandatory policies. Can you pull that up, Jackie? All right, this just simply is the mandatory policies are basically the superintendent shall create and implement policies as required by local, state, and federal legislation and regulation present the proposed policy to the board for review and adoption and through the consent agenda before implementation. And there is a monitoring report attached to this, but as we can see from our agendas each month, the superintendent has complied with this ER 13. Are there any comments or discussion, Art or Leanna? If
Um,
not, I would entertain a motion to find the superintendent's performance in compliance with this policy.
I would like to move that we find the superintendent's performance compliant with the policies. And as a comment, I think this particular procedure is, and the policy and how we work it is really going really well. I can't be more happy with how we get the policies presented to us and how they work out with the red, the black, sometimes the green, and the stuff to help us interpret the changes and stuff like that. I'm just really pleased with how that's going. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Art. Any other comments? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. Leanna?
Aye.
Art?
Aye.
I vote aye, and the motion or the monitoring report is approved. So now we are at policy review. Last month, we discussed asset protection and facilities and found the superintendent's performance to comply with those two policies. Is there any other discussion around that? No? Okay, we are at adjournment, the good of the order. I have the board self-assessment. Oh, wait a minute, I'm missing a little bit here. Are there any comments or announcements that may or may not be related to the agenda items that anyone would like to?
Looks like Leanna has her hand raised.
Oh, go ahead, Leanna. I can't see you, you're dark.
I know, I don't have a lot of light in this room. I just wanted to put out, just in case anybody is watching or whoever is, they could spread the word that this time of year really runs into a depressing time. And I know that we're all going through some really tough stuff. And the school, it has been amazing helping with the food and helping with families and putting themselves out there. The teachers putting up with what they have to with the kids, and the kids putting up with the teachers and the parents and everybody. But I know it can get really depressing. And even if it's just a little bit, when our budgets hit just under, when we're not comfortable, I know how depressing that can be. And there are a lot of resources out there. There's like our food bank is overflowing with certain foods that can really go out there, and they need to get it out. And there's a pantry, and there's a resource center, and we have some other groups that have come, and it's not a big like go to the food bank, but it's free food. And the Coalition of Churches I've been working with, getting foods here and there, and there's places to reach out to, and don't ever feel like you're alone, because we're going through it. And I know that a $2 bag of potatoes when I come home that I got for free, man, that might have been $2, but I came home with free potatoes and it felt good. And I'm not destitute. It's not about that. And it's about just kind of connecting with each other and letting each other know that these resources are there and that we're kind of there for each other. So that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Leanna. Okay, if there isn't anything else, I will do the board self-assessment and our general meeting behavior. This is something that we use to evaluate our performance during meetings after every meeting. And there are two categories: general meeting behavior and governance principles review. And I find that we followed the principles and reviewed some policies this this month. And as far as general meeting behavior, the agenda was well planned. The board members were prepared and the meeting proceeded without interruptions, and the deliberations and decision-making processes were public. So I'm going to find that our overall performance is satisfactory. And with that, if no one has anything else, our next board meeting date is November 19th at 6:30. And hopefully we may be able to have a real meeting in the room. But we'll have to wait and see about that. So I'm going to adjourn the meeting now, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you.